Hello, everybody. How you guys doing? Hope everybody had a fantastic holiday. It's New Year's, so Happy New Year, everybody. Big changes are coming this year for our consciousness, 5D. Big things are going to happen. So, hope you all have a blessed New Year, and I hope everything that you want, comes to you. So you haven't seen anything from me for a while. I'm not a holiday person. I do not celebrate Christmas, especially after my NDE. It's just, once again, something the Catholic Church made up, and I'm not going to get into it right now. It could be a topic for another video if you guys want to know. That's fine. So I was really struggling with what to talk about over the holidays, and I didn't want to bother anybody on the holidays. I wanted everybody to concentrate on their friends, their family, and their traditions of Christmas and New Year's. So I just let it be. And as I was sitting here thinking last night, I'm like, what can I talk about? What can we really discuss that would interest you guys and that would, I don't know, make you think a little bit outside the box of what you're normally used to through, well, most of you are, Christian or Catholic, that would make you think outside the box, stir the pot, muddy the water, which is, what I'm here for, which is to tell the truth, and a lot of you get upset by that. I shouldn't say a lot of you, some of you, the select few. For most of you guys have been extremely supportive of this channel and the knowledge and information that still comes to me. So I'm like, what can I talk about? So today we'll talk about who Jesus really was. Who was Jesus? So we'll talk about that. But before we get into that, please put in the comments what you guys want me to talk about. All right. I lost that again through some heavy cleaning, and I was like, what can we talk about? And I lost it. So put that in the comments. Like I said, I read all your comments and I love them. Most of them are so supportive, and I am truly blessed. I did not expect any of this. It's been a journey for me. I listened to my guidance system, and this is where I need to be teaching. And this year is going to change through my website, loveandlightjason.com, and through my YouTube. They're both going to grow. I know that not only will I be doing these videos, but seminars, across the country and other things. So I know that's coming. I can feel it. I'm coming to the end of the bad stuff, the rough stuff, and this new life that is going to blossom soon. So please put your comments down there. I want to help as many of you as I can. So that's what this channel is about. It's about love and light, because that is who we are. And again, I'm talking to all the negatives who don't want to believe, who go around to everybody's, NDE experience, or all those that don't fit into your little category of what you think the Bible is, or what and who we are, that want to leave those nasty comments. Being an empath, I read the first two words and you're instantly gone, because I can feel it. All right, you're blocked from the channel. You might be able to leave the comment, but it'll just come to my email, and it'll just get deleted. So, just don't, is all I'm asking you to do. Just don't. If it doesn't fit into what you think, this world is, or, who you are, just keep believing that way, because it's fine. You have free will. All right, you have that free will, and I don't blame you at all. I don't, hate you. I love you all very much. All right, and that is why I'm doing this, even to those that want to slam me, hurt me, berate me. That's fine. I still love you. You have that free will. God gave you free will, and it is your free will to believe in that, to remain lost. You're not going to remain lost for long, because everybody going through this change in 2024, you're going to awaken, and you're going to see the truth. And that is, perfect justification for me. All right, so just don't leave the comment, save it for somebody else, because they'll block you too. All right, we know the truth. We know, and it's that simple. Some of us choose to speak about it, and some of us choose to speak out against that which holds everybody down, that keeps people living in fear. And that is something I will not stand for. You know, it's the reason why I started talking and doing interviews about my near-death experience, because fear doesn't exist. It is brought on by religion, mostly. And I'm going to talk about this as I have. I can only talk about the language that I know, right? Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me. I can only talk in what language I'm talking about is Catholicism. I was born in 1970. My parents were not. I don't ever believe my parents took me to church, ever. It was my grandparents, especially my grandma, who was the world to me. And I firmly believed her. And when I started going, I think it was 5th and 6th grade, I was sent to the Catholic Church. You know, I became an altar boy. I went to a Catholic school. I just believed in it, you know. And when I talked about my other experiences, I knew I was doomed. There was no way. I believed God was a human God, waiting up there with a shotgun, waiting up there with a bat, just snickering and like, I got him now, right? None of you know who God is or what he is. It's that simple. None of you know who God is. You all think, well, I can't say all. Some of you do believe. Some of you are awakening, an itch, who, you know, are adding 1 and 1's not adding up to 2 anymore, right? So, and the same goes for Jesus. Most of you do not know who Jesus really is, what his teachings really were. All you get is what the Bible tells you. All right? And upon my own death, when I came back, I knew it was wrong. Period. End of subject. There was no judgment held against me. None. Well, I can't say that. I judged myself horrifically. And the more I judged myself, the more I was loved. Okay? So, in today's video, it's simply going to be, who was Jesus? Who was Yeshua Bar Yosef? What did he really come here for? All right? Don't want to make it overly complicated, and I don't want to make it overly long. All right? But I do want to stress some very important things. All right? Jesus did not want to come during the time period he wanted, or that Father wanted him to come to. He did not. He did not think it was a good time for the message to come out. And I firmly believe that. I think if he had come around, like at the turn of the century here, 1900, even now, 2000s, I think would be a spectacular time for Jesus to have come. The implications of our technology, the way I can reach all of you around the world, sitting here in Wisconsin, talking about this. I'm reaching Russia, the Czech Republic, India, China, Great Britain. I'm reaching the world, sitting here on my couch. But Father said, no, that's the time period that he needed to come. So Jesus was born anywhere from 6 BC to 4 BC. All right. And again, it's scholars will debate, and it's really not up for debate. He was born 2,000 years ago. All right. So we're going to simplify things, right? And from the time he was born, all right. And now this is just going to be about Jesus. All right, guys. It's just going to be about who Jesus really is, not what the Catholic Church said or wanted him to be. This is about who he is, his message. All right. So Jesus was born 2,000 years ago into the only language he knew, right, at the time, which was Hebrew. He was a Jew, right? So that's the only language he knew. But from the time of his birth, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, Jesus was born in a natural way, heterosexual intercourse, sex. Okay, he wasn't born of a virgin. Out of all the women that have ever graced this planet, that, you know, he was just miraculously conceived. Wrong. Mom and dad, Mary and Joseph, right, had sex. Jesus was one of 3 or 4 siblings, period. Just like I was conceived through sex. All of you were conceived through intercourse, sex, period. All right? Now, what you don't know is that this was his last incarnation, and that is why you only know of Jesus Christ or Yeshua Bar Yosef for all you Jews out there. And I mean no disrespect when I say Jews. I just don't want to say Jewish. So please understand that. I mean no disrespect to you, all right? So he was born a Jew, and he was born in a very difficult and a very hard time. But he was conceived the natural way, through sex. But what made him special is that he didn't know it, but from the time of his birth, he was receiving, and he could feel it, and he could hear the words from the non-physical. They were giving him guidance from, day one. He was receiving that from the non-physical, telling him and guiding him, all right? And we don't know much about his youth, so we're not going to get into that. But so we'll get into his late teens and early 20s when he really knew what he wanted to do, all right? Jesus knew, like I do now, wanted to teach, all right? Being guided by the non-physical. What's the non-physical? Non-physical is home, all right? It's receiving guidance from higher beings, much higher beings, okay? Being told what to do and kind of where to go. And part of what Jesus did was Jesus never judged anybody ever, all right? All Jesus did was love unconditionally every single being that he ran into. Didn't matter what you were, okay? If you were a farmer, he loved you. If you were in a position of education, loved you. If you were a person of ill repute, that we know as a hooker or prostitute, loved you just the same. He wanted to get to know you and would chat with you and talk with you. All right? So I would say in his mid-20s, early 20s, that Jesus had a divine experience, right? He, what do you want to call this? Knew that he had to leave. So he was with Mary. He was in love with Mary. And he knew that he had to leave, that he was going to go on a journey. It was a guidance from the non-physical. He and Mary talked about it. And back in that day, women were truly not allowed to leave, to go on journeys like that. It was condemned. She could have literally been put to death for doing that. It sounds insane. All you ladies out there, you want to go to the grocery store, you want to go on a 20-mile hike. Could you imagine not being able to do that because you'd be put to death? That's the religion of the time. So she could not go. She understood, but, and as true couples that depart, you become, worried, afraid of your partner, especially taking on a journey such as this. So Jesus traveled across North Africa in a caravan. It took him a great deal of time. He stopped at different oases, and was learning as much as he could about these people, about their religion, about their life. Learning, ladies and gentlemen, he was absorbing everything that he possibly could. All right, so while he's traveling across North Africa in these caravans, he would come into places of, ports or stuff, and he would be out of money. So what did he do? He worked. He worked in the docks. He loaded ships, unloaded ships, worked in a tavern, bars, or fixed things, and he would make money. Because he just wasn't traveling for free. It cost him money. So what did he do? He was a worker. Like you get up and go to work in the shop every day. He worked. He made gold, silver for working for 3 or 4 months. He'd jump back into this caravan, travel further, right? And he would spend his money on food and things. When he ran out of money, he worked again, right? He wasn't, this, sitting on a throne and he had all this gold. No, ladies and gentlemen, Jesus Christ was a man of flesh and blood, just like you and I. And that's it. He was a man of flesh and blood. He was a divine being like all of us, living having a human experience. But this was his last one. He didn't know it yet, but you'll get it in a minute. So as he's traveling, he finally made it to his destination, India. All right? And this is where Jesus learned to access his powers. He learned from the best mystics of the time back then, right? He spent over a year there in India learning from the best. Now, we talked about this in the Bible, right? Through Buddhism and in Hinduism, they look at miraculous stories of healing people, raising people from the dead as normal stuff. It's no big deal. Right? It's only in our Western culture that we look at that as a freak, that Jesus was a freak, and what he was teaching was freakish. But in the East, they take that with a grain of salt. It was nothing. So as he was sitting there, and he was over there for a year and a half, let's say 2 years, he was learning from the best mystics, learning to access his divinity, our powers, ladies and gentlemen, powers that all of us have. You and I are no different than Jesus. I've told you this from the beginning. How do I know? My near-death experience, my time in heaven, my ability to communicate through energy or psychic powers, right? Your telepathic communication, right? I was no longer speaking through a mouth. My thought would barely get into my head, and it was spoken and given to me in an answer. I knew it, all right? He was learning how to access this through the best mystics at the time in India, all right? And how did he access that? Through meditation, ladies and gentlemen. He learned how to meditate, how to control his mind, his thoughts. And is it easy? God, no, it's not. For me, it's very hard. And this is a daily practice. And when I mean daily, I get up in the morning, 2 hours before work, and meditate. Some days it's beautiful, some days it's a struggle, but you keep at it. And for 2 years, he sat there and learned how to do this. And guess what? He accessed those powers. He accessed that divine sonship, right? That, what is it? The Jews call it, or the Hebrews call it, the Ruach Adonai, right? The divine within us, our divinity, right? And as Christians know it in the Bible, the breath of God, when God created Adam, and right? The divine in us, right? So Jesus accessed that divinity. He had control of his powers. The same powers you and I have. I've controlled it once, and it was the most amazing thing. It took the pain away. I controlled it. I told it what to do, and it did it, ladies and gentlemen. It started at the crown of my head right here, and it felt like a ball of energy about that big, and it went down my spine to like right at the base of my neck, and it stood there, and I was like humming, like literally, and I felt like I was out of my body. I had never experienced that yet, except for that one time. And it stood there, and I was in so much pain in my lower back. I said, make it go away. And that energy traveled down my spine, and it hit my lower back, and it crushed it. And again, this another round wave of energy came down, and it stopped. And I said, make it go away. Not verbally, but in my head, right? In my mind. And it controlled it. Jesus accessed that power through his teachings in the East, in India, through the very best, who those teachers, to them, that was absolutely natural and normal. But to us here in the West, is absurd, right? We'll talk about it in a minute. So when Jesus was done there, he jumped into another caravan, traveled across North Africa, did the same thing, worked, right, at various ports and stuff. And yes, he talked to prostitutes, loved them. You know, when they asked, you know, do you need me? He's like, no, I have somebody at home. I love, I love her. But he never judged or condemned anybody who he ran into, no matter what their beliefs were, ladies and gentlemen. None, not once did he judge. All Jesus did was love unconditionally. Did not matter who you were, what position of power you were in, did not matter. You were loved unconditionally. So as he's traveling across North Africa, stopping at these oases, and again, learning from different cultures, different various aspects of, religion, sex, what you do for a living, how you do this, he was intrigued and wanted to know and learned that. So he comes back to home, right? And he's been gone now 3 years, I do believe. 3 years he was gone, away from Mary. And he lost a lot of weight, So as he traveled back home, the reunion, you can guess, was an amazing reunion with the love of his life, Mary. He didn't want anybody else, period. So now I would say he's in his 25, 26, maybe 27, right? And decides to get married. He wanted to marry his wife, the woman he loved. So he marries Mary. And I guess in Jewish tradition, that's kind of old and frowned upon to be married that old back then. So I guess 25, 26, around 27, that was kind of frowned upon, because I guess in Jewish, traditions back then that you got married young, so I don't know that much about the Jewish religion. And so if I'm wrong, please forgive me, but I do believe that's when he got married, and it was, kind of, late, so to speak. So when he got married, this is when his true teachings started to come, right? He sat with Mary for a long time in their home, right? They had a home. And he taught her what he learned. He taught her how to gain access to her powers. Now, did she reach what he did? And we're going to get into, no. But was she powerful? Yes, she was. She learned how to control and access who we are. We're not human, ladies and gentlemen. I told you that. I am not a man. Who I thought after my NDE, right, was good old Jason Janis, that went out the window. That is completely superficial. Who I thought I once was gone forever. And that was a difficult change for me. It was very hard to come to terms with, because every time I looked in the mirror, that person was dead. I know who and what I am, and I am not a man. I am not this body. I am not. Neither are any of you. All right. That's part of the illusion, part of the game that I talked about in my earlier video, right? It furthers the illusion of the game, the dance, why we're here, right? Well, Jesus found out why he was here, which was we're coming up to. So as he's teaching Mary and going through this stuff, they get married and they have children, right? They have, I think, 2 or 3 children. And again, you can imagine what that household was like, right? So Jesus firmly believed in equality, all right? He saw no difference, none, between the male and female, right? Did not. He taught equality. So when he came back, he's still being guided by the non-physical, telling him what to do, where to go, kind of giving him advice and showing him that one day he wakes up and he gets this message. And, he says, you are going to be baptized today. And he's like, why? I have no, I don't want to do this. Why? No. He kind of made us think, right? But, he says, fine, all right. This is what you're telling me. I'll go get baptized. But make no mistakes about it, ladies. He did not want to get baptized. He did not see a reason for it. It meant nothing to him. But being guided by the non-physical, he went. So who did he get baptized by? John, his cousin, right? So he went down to the river, stood in line, like the rest of everybody, to get baptized. And as his turn, he walks into the water to his cousin, and the moment John plunged him under the water, boom, Christ consciousness. He was zapped with an electrical current that made him spasm. Like when you get a nerve and it's spasming, your thumb's twitching, right? So all of a sudden, within a trillionth of a second, he was one with everything, all right? And this is something, unless you've had an NDE, you cannot possibly understand, all right? This was his moment. This was his becoming one with everything. And didn't have to go through an NDE. He was just simply, baptized. And that's what they wanted him to do. It was that moment of being underwater and this electrical current that he became one. So as he was pulled back out of the water, he's spasming heavily like an epileptic, just twitching and arms and legs and, just going at it. So, and it took a lot out of him. So as he's staggering out of the water, he knew he couldn't be seen by anybody because they would think he was, back in that day, possessed by a demon or something. So he wandered offshore into the woods, which were, wooded grass. And this in the scriptures, ladies and gentlemen, as wandering in the desert for 3 weeks, right? Well, he wasn't wandering. He was sitting there hiding because he was still spasming heavily, just twitching and jerking. And, because any of you, unless you've had an NDE, don't understand. Like I expressed the energy when I said I was juiced. I was like, whoa. And that's what he was. Except I was no longer in a physical body. I didn't have a body to spasm out during that electrical surge or that energy surge that, when I merged with the light. And when I say I was ensconced in the light, and you all look at the light as God, well, that was me. I became one with the light. I was home. All right? And yes, I was juiced. Yes, I wasn't this anymore. I was young, mid-20s maybe. And juiced, instant knowledge, and that's what Jesus had, but he was in a physical form. So his body was reacting to that violently, and he sat in the woods and he walked a little bit, but he was still twitching, he drank from the river because back then the river's clean. You don't have to worry about it. So, that in the Bible as Jesus wandered the desert for, 30 days. Well, he wasn't wandering the desert. He was in the desert, but he was in shade. He was in, by the river. He didn't eat for 3 weeks, but he drank. And, as the spasms subside, like 3 weeks later, and he could return to what we all would call normal. There is no such thing as normal. Normal doesn't exist. What's normal to me is not normal to you. And what's normal to you isn't normal to whatever. So I don't like using that word normal, but we'll use it in this purpose. So as he returned to his, normal self, he returned home, right? And of course, Mary's terrified and worried about him. He lost a lot of weight. And, he told her about what had happened. And this universal knowledge of knowing everything that has ever existed, ladies and gentlemen. And that's what every NDEer gets, that knowledge, that instant knowing of oneness, this love, this unconditional everything, who you are, where you're from, you know, he knows all of that now, right? But now he gets to retain it in a physical form. I wasn't in my physical form. I was my energy. I was the love, the light, right? I was no longer in this. So when he reached that moment of being plunged under the water, Jesus essentially was his last incarnation here. He retained that oneness. He achieved the goal that we're all trying to get to, and that is to become one and gain that knowledge, because he had that power. He knew who he was. He gained access to that power, that energy, who we are, in the East. And now coupled with the knowledge of oneness from home, now being one with the non-physical, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's the end goal. That's what we come here for, you know. So what did he do? He began his teachings, right? Now he's in his late 20s, 27, 28. He's married, you know, 29, 30, right? And in those teachings and in that time of oneness, Jesus knew 2 years before his death how he was going to die. It was shown and given to him, right? How many of you would like to know how you're going to die, especially 2 years before you're going to? Now, not die, but transition. But he knew how his physical life was going to end, okay? I don't know if I would really want that right now, even though I know what's existing. I know what's coming, you know, that death is simply an illusion, that, you know, it is, I was more alive in the non-physical than I have ever been in this body and ever will be in this physical form, right? I do not fear anything that comes. Fear is an illusion. But anyway, he discussed that with Mary. He discussed it with his children. He knew what was coming, but he still set forth his mission, why he came here. He wanted to teach. He loved to teach, like I am doing with you guys. I love it. I think about it every day when I have to go to this physical job. I think about you guys every day. How can I help you? How can I touch you? How can I reach you? How can I love you more? Right? And that's what he was about, what Jesus was about, right? So he began to teach in his home, all right? Everybody thinks that Jesus wandered all over God's creation, you know, running diarrhea of the mouth. That's not the case, ladies and gentlemen. Jesus was a rebel. In his early days, he bucked the Roman Empire. He bucked and mocked the religious institutions of the time. He knew they were wrong. And he, in a quiet way, but in a non-subtle way, you know, spoke out against it. Well, when he had his Christ consciousness moment, right, plunged under the water, that's no longer an option. But he still had to be careful on how he spoke. Back then, the church had the power over life and death. Could you imagine going into, you know, your Christian church right now, telling, you know, your pastor, you know, during confession, yeah, I fornicated around, you know, I slapped some people around, robbed a bank, you know, you'd be put to death, you know? Could you imagine that? The kind of power? You wouldn't, what would you do? You'd zip your lip, right? So what he would do when he was starting his ministry is he would be in his home, right? And he would have his disciples who he was also teaching how to gain access to these powers. So when he said, you know, go out and heal, they're like, are you not coming with? No. You know, they went out and healed people. Why? They had the same access to the powers that he had, which aren't really powers, ladies and gentlemen. They're who we are. They're ours. It's in us. It's our divinity, okay? We've just forgotten. And he was waking people up. Jesus came here to wake people up and said, wake up, realize who you are. I am no different than you, okay? You know, I am no different than you. You have and can do the exact same things as I can. Everybody was just lost, right? It's like looking at an infant and somebody graduating college, right? They're just further apart on the scale of where they are in their life. That's it. Jesus was so far up the ladder that God called on him to get this mission done. Why? Because it was going to be his last one. He was going to achieve oneness, and which he did through his being baptized. All right? So now as he's teaching these in his home, people would walk in and feel instantly at ease. Their pains were gone. Their aches were gone, right? And when Jesus spoke of these things, some people were utterly terrified, freaked out, like, oh my God, I can't listen to this. I could be killed for this. And they're right. They could have been killed. So they would get up and leave, and they would zip their lip. They wouldn't talk about it. But others who believed, when they would come in and they would feel his love, they would feel his energy, they would feel healed, right? They sat and they learned from him. They listened to him. They were healed, just not even by being touched, just by walking into his room, his home. All right? That's how powerful he was. When I mean powerful, I mean that's how in control of his energy, of his thoughts, of getting rid of the ego or killing the ego and obtaining not his physical mind, but his spiritual mind. All right? He was living in the spirit world in a physical body. So he had control of that energy, and people were being healed by that. The disciples learned how to heal. They went out and they healed. Jesus stayed back and he communed with the non-physical. He would meditate for hours, somewhere like a dark cave somewhere. He would meditate and he would get all the answers he needed, which he already knew anyway, right? So, Jesus was a mystic, and not a mystic in the sense that he had extraordinary powers. We all know that he had that energy. No, Jesus believed in oneness, the union with God, right? Being one. I said that one in my NDE. I was one with everything. It's such a generic term. And sometimes I have to state things that way because, when Jesus spoke to people, and this is why, you'll understand, people were ignorant back then, okay? Most, if not all, could not read or write. You had those that came from money that could afford to send or to teach their children how to read and write, but most were farmers back then, right? Or herders or sheep herders or whatever you want to call it, ignorant, right? All they knew was their religion, and their religion taught them what, any religion would, this is the way. So when Jesus spoke out in public, you hear him speak, he would speak in parables, stories, right? He was trying to, like when I dumb things down for everybody, sometimes, you guys, some people get mad, but I have to. So Jesus spoke in parables. He spoke in stories. He spoke a way that the modern person, the average Joe out there, could understand. So he spoke in a story that they could relate to, that they could understand. All right? That's why he spoke the way he did. Now, you come into our time, would he be speaking that way? Probably not. He would be speaking to you just as clear as I am talking to you. So Jesus had to come up with ways that he could reach people for them to understand. So what was he doing when that one day, he's out in public and he was with his disciples, but he was around regular people. And he said, I and the Father are one. Holy cow. The shitstorm that took place there, right? Those that weren't the intimate disciples. And I've spoke about this before in the Bible, my video on the Bible. Those that weren't the disciples picked up stones to stone them, right? And Jesus said to them, from which works of the Father that I have shown you am I to be stoned? And they all say, for your good works not, but you being a man, make yourself God. Now his reply, which you all know because I've said this before, is it not written in your law that I said you are gods? I do believe that's John 30, verse 10, somewhere in there. I don't remember, nor do I care. But he let me say it again. Is it not written in your law? I said you are gods. And they all dropped their stones. He's telling you, ladies and gentlemen, right there, 2,000 years ago, wake up and realize who you are. You are a God. A direct manifestation of God, the divine source, whatever you want to call him. And he's not a him. I say it because of my NDE. I told you that in that moment, I felt like I was his one and only son, realizing not at the time that I was God. I was home, you know. But he says it right there. And for some of you, that's very hard to understand. Like, what do you mean I'm a God? You are an incredibly powerful, divine, creative being, a God. You have the power, ladies and gentlemen, to make stars and suns bow to your will. All right? We have simply forgotten who we are. I have not. I know who I am. But for the majority of you out there, you have forgotten. You're caught up in the illusion, the game, the dance, which is what you wanted to create, right? When you decided to slip away into a dream and say, I'm going to feel separate from God, creating instantly fear and guilt, right? Well, 2,000 years ago, it was the same thing. They're lost in the game. They're lost in the dance, the illusion. He simply came here to put his hand in the clear water and get down to the mud and muddy it up. Say, wake up, people. Wake up. Realize who you are. And that's what he was teaching, ladies and gentlemen, okay? That's what his ministry was all about. No more. He was bucking the system. He was bucking the occupation. And he did not care. Did not care. He already knew how he was going to die. And he still went into his teachings with love. Unconditional love for everyone. Man, woman, child. He taught equality. Men and women were no different. None. And that he was teaching how to gain access to those powers through our meditation, how to meditate. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, through our sexual energy. Maybe the next topic of video will be the 2 keys, our guidance system and sexual energy, all in one video. But yes, he was teaching you that sex was beautiful. It was divine. It was a way to reach home. Guess what? Church couldn't stand for that. There's no way. Even now, even in the Catholic Church, they made sex a dirty sin. Do not masturbate. You'll go to hell. Well, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Every single one of you out there are masturbating, which is beautiful. The non-physical wants you. Make love to yourself. It is absolutely beautiful and divine. Love yourself. That's what he means by that. Love yourself like you love your neighbor. Well, love your neighbor is masturbating. You're masturbating. Have fun. Enjoy yourself. All right? It's a divine route home. He was teaching this through heterosexual, and it didn't matter about homosexual because homosexuality back then was not a big deal. Like Alexander the Great in that time period, nobody cared. Nobody cared back then. It's only in the modern time, right, that the church said, you know, homosexuality is a sin, and it's not. And even your fearless leader out there, ladies and gentlemen, the Pope, already said in 2 interviews that homosexuality is not a sin, only, which is a crock, if it's in the form of marriage. Well, same-sex marriage isn't all over the place, but we'll reiterate again, homosexuality is not a sin. Why? Sin does not exist. And if you love one another, love one another. You all know that I had bisexual experiences in my life. Should have been condemned to hell. Well, hell doesn't exist. And Jesus was teaching this, okay? He was a teacher of divinity, of the divine in us, right? And again, in Hebrew, the Ruach Adonai, the divine within us. We are all incredibly powerful, divine beings of love, light, and energy. We're here experiencing a human experience in this human vehicle. That's it. So wake up, ladies and gentlemen. Wake up and realize who you are. That was Jesus's true message, why he came here in this physical realm for the last time. He wants you to know who you are and how to gain access to your divinity, to your powers, the same powers he has, the same powers that I have learned to control that one night. They're there, ladies and gentlemen. They are there. They're buried. You're run by the ego. Kill the ego, what he was teaching, right? The ego is not your friend. For millennia, we've passed the reins over to the ego. And what is the ego? How is his main method of conversation? Attack, condemn, and judge. Right? What did Jesus say? Love one another unconditionally. And if that person has wronged you, right? Because we're all role-playing down here, right? We've all asked each other in our lives to, do these things for us. And some of them are pretty harsh and horrific. Some of them are beautiful and, whatever. But whatever it is, forgive unconditionally. And that's what he taught, ladies and gentlemen. And what is that? That's unity. That's oneness, which is what we were created for. And that's what we are. So during his teachings, right, he did it for 2 years. And then Jesus was simply put to death as a common criminal. He broke the law. He was not allowed to teach what he was teaching. It was forbidden by the church at the time. He was not allowed to talk about those things. That's why when people came into his home and he was teaching these things and feeling the energy, they freaked out. They ran out, saying, no, I could be killed. And they're absolutely right. They could have been killed. So in that aspect, ladies and gentlemen, Jesus was a mystic. Not in the sense, like I said, that he had all these, powers that he had. No. In the term mystic, I mean unity with God, oneness with God. And that's what he was teaching, which was totally against the religion at the time, the Jewish religion. He was put to death as a common criminal. Jesus was a man of flesh and blood, just like me, right? I'm in this vehicle. It's a flesh and blood vehicle. That's all it is. That's how he got around to teach his message, was a male body. That was it. He did not come here to start a religion. He did not come here for any of that, nor did he want to be baptized. He saw no point in it. It made no sense to him. And if he were alive today in a physical body, in who he is, he would have words with the Catholic Church. Make no mistake about it. He's got a huge bone to pick with the Catholic Church. And the tool that's being used for that is me. I am the one that will speak out on it. All right? Yes, I was Catholic for 49 years. On April 2nd was my last night on this earth. Between the 2nd and the 5th of April, somewhere in there, I don't know, was when my NDE occurred. And everything that I was taught was wrong within a trillionth of a second. I knew everything, just like he did when he was plunged underwater. He knew everything. Okay? There was no more whisperings from the non-physical. It was instant knowledge. Knowledge of everything. And that is what he taught. He taught love and forgiveness. He taught oneness with God. And he said, wake up and realize who you are. Is it not written in your law? I said, you are God's. That's who Jesus was, ladies and gentlemen. Not what the church portrayed as, being the only Son of God born of a virgin. Out of all the women that have graced this earth, this one was just immaculately, impregnated, and, a book descended from heaven. This is God's word. Wrong. No. What did the church do? Hundreds of years later. Kicked them upstairs, right? Heaven can't be a democracy. No. There's no way heaven can be a democracy. So what is it? It's like a dictatorship. It's a militancy, right? The Catholic Church is a militancy. It's based on fear. It sure is. How do I know? I've lived through it for 49 years. It's a militancy. Or if you want to put it into politer terms, a monarchy, right? He was simply kicked upstairs with the boss. Out of touch, out of reach, a freak. Right? Because if you look at it, he was a freak. Healing people from the dead, curing leprosy, curing blindness, Could you imagine if somebody was walking around down here with those powers? People would be freaking out. They'd find a way to hunt him down and kill him, or bring him in for testing and studying and stuff like that. Jesus was a freak, or the religion of Catholicism made him into being a freak. So they say, okay. He was the only Son of God. Whoop, upstairs with the boss. Out of touch, out of reach. And we're all told through the Catholic Church to follow his example. How the hell can we follow his example when we don't even know who we are, right? He knew who he was. I know who I am now. And it's part of why, in my deconstruction, that I dropped Christianity like a fart in the wind. Gone. Means nothing. God does not care about your religion. Jesus does not care about your religion. As a matter of fact, it just gets in the way of finding out of who you truly are. So, Christianity made a freak out of Jesus, put him upstairs, turned him into something that he was never meant to be, nor does he want to be. He's not your Lord and Savior, everybody. He's not. He was simply a teacher, here to wake you all up, to make you realize who you are. I know who I am. Anybody that has an NDE, they know who they are, right? Whether they want to speak about it or not, like I do. I don't want you to live in fear anymore, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want you to think because of anything that you have done that you're going to, all of a sudden, when this body is done and you transition, that there's a human God, a human Jesus waiting up there to snicker at you, beat you with a bat, and condemn you to an eternity of suffering. Because you don't know who God is, who Jesus really is. And I'm sorry, but we'll say one more thing about Jesus before I go, because this video was longer than I wanted. All of us Westerners, right? How is Jesus portrayed? Looks like a Middle Eastern man from Wisconsin or Canada or somewhere, a white guy, long hair and beard. Well, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, he's not. Jesus is Middle Eastern. How are Middle Eastern men look today? Dark brown or light brown or mocha colored skin. Jesus was black, ladies and gentlemen. And if not black, dark brown or medium brown, period. With a scruffy beard, scraggly hair. And if you were to dress him in a modern day, right, in the way they dress in the modern day Middle East, he'd look like a damn terrorist. That is Jesus Christ, Yeshua Bar Yosef. Back then, average Mo, looking wise, right? Today, you would look at him as a terrorist. Pure and simple. So your beliefs in what has been given to you have been lies, ladies and gentlemen. Outright lies. Even when you look at the movie Passion of the Christ, right? Jesus is a white man. Wrong. Every movie that you see back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, Jesus is a white man. Jesus is not white. Never has been, never will. But when people say, I died and saw Jesus and he came to me and he looked like that, that's because that's how you see him as. He will incarnate in a physical body to make you feel comfortable. Could you imagine if Jesus showed up to all of you who believe that Jesus is some white guy from Wisconsin with long hair and a beard, but he showed up as a dark Middle Eastern man, scruffy looking beard? Who's this? Well, that's how he really was, ladies and gentlemen. That's how he's portrayed. And if any of you have seen this movie, it's a beautiful movie, and I encourage you to watch this because this is who Jesus really is. Watch the movie The Shack. All right? That accurately depicts Jesus and what his physical appearance would really look like. Now, in the modern world, he looks good, trimmed and stuff like that. Back then, not so. But who cares what, the physical appearance looks like? And so who he really was and who he taught. All right? So we need to get that out of the way too. Jesus is not some white guy from North America. He's Middle Eastern. He's dark, black. Maybe not black, but, I'd say mocha skin for sure, So, let's talk about who Jesus really was. And that's who he really was, ladies and gentlemen. All right? He was a powerful Son of God. He got into his powers, and he used those powers for love, ladies and gentlemen. Love. He taught love, unconditional love, even upon his death. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. They're lost. That's what the meaning means, right? Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. They're simply lost. They don't know. And I'm here to wake you all up. In 2024, while we are really transitioning into this higher consciousness, more and more of you are going to awaken and to see this. Some of you are still going to be lost and look at this video and cry bullshit. You're so full of shit, Jason, and again, you're blocked. But that's who Jesus really was, ladies and gentlemen. I need you to know that. I need you to understand who he truly was. A beautiful man, a beautiful being, all right, of love, unconditional love. He talked about it, he preached it, and he showed it through his actions, through his ministry. And it eventually got him murdered. And he accepted that. All right? He knew it. He told Mary. That's why Mary stayed through his entire crucifixion, brought him to his burial chamber. She knew. It was no surprise to her or the kids. So when you say, well, Jason, what is the most powerful thing worth hiding, worth keeping? And it makes no sense, especially to Yeshua. I mean, even to me, it's just ludicrous, but they talk about Jesus's bloodline, right? He had children. Well, if he's the only Son of God and he's this, what are his children? They can't be allowed to be talked about or known about, right? So what did the Catholic Church do? Vatican City rolls up, right? Every scrap of knowledge, every scrap of who Jesus truly was rounded up and hidden. It'd be like me having all this knowledge, taking where I live and making a 20 square radius. You're not allowed to come in here. I have my own police force. I have my own government. And every scrap of knowledge I had is now hidden, and I'm not going to talk about it. Does that make sense? No. So in essence, does his bloodline still walk this earth in a body? Sure, but who cares? It means nothing. You're all a god anyway, so it's just a vehicle that you get around in. But the church, they got to hold on to their power and, their uniqueness of throwing Jesus up with the boss. You're the boss too, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen. And you have those exact same powers. So what they're trying to hide, the Catholic Church, and keep you from knowing through your sexual energy, through your guidance system, they don't have that power anymore. There's too many of us that are talking about it. There's too many of us letting you know how to wake up Find yourself. So meditate, ladies and gentlemen. How? I just found a spot right here behind me. When I meditate in the morning and at night, I sit here, I quiet my mind, and for most nights, I can feel my energy. I can feel the hum. I'm not that great at it, but you know what? I will not give up on it. And then one day it's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to get it, all of it. And so can you, all right? It takes time. It takes work. It's why we come here into this physical world, to work at things. Even though none of these things are real, it's all an illusion, we still come here to find our energy. That's the ultimate goal of coming here, ladies and gentlemen, is to find your energy through those experiences. Some of them dark, some of them light, some of them mediocre, some of them a little harder, some of them a little easier, you know? And that's what we came here to find, and Jesus found that. And then he opened up to the baptism and became one. Christ consciousness, universal consciousness, oneness. It doesn't matter what you want to call it, all right? So I just want you to know who he was, and that's what this video was about. I'm sorry it got a little too long, but it is what it is. I hope you guys listen to it in its entirety. It's important that you realize who he is, or was, I should say, and still is, you know. He's talking to you every day. Every day, the non-physical is trying to get a hold of you. Jesus is trying to get a hold of you. A crack in the armor. Let your guard down. Let the truth come in. Realize who you are, how loved you are. I said this before, you're never alone. You are never alone. Jesus is with you 24/7. Your guardian angel, mine is Michael, with me 24/7. No matter what I do, take a shower, go to the bathroom, masturbate, you know, go grocery shopping, he will never leave my side. And he's not a male or female, but my archangel will never leave me. My guide, Jeffrey, never leave me. I am surrounded by love. I am surrounded by Yeshua. So are you. Wake up, ladies and gentlemen, okay? Wake up. I love you so very much, and that's why I continue to do these. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please put them down in the comments, because you know that I do read them. I do respond to most of you. I cannot get to all of you, and I am truly sorry. I am truly sorry. And if there's something you truly want me to talk about, bring it up. One thing I'm going to talk about, I am going to do a live stream probably this weekend, probably on a Saturday. I'm going to try and set up a studio. I got to get that worked out. I'm not sure how to do it yet, but I'll get that set up. If not, right here on YouTube, I'm going to hit live stream, and I'm going to live stream, and I'm going to talk maybe an hour, hour and a half. I encourage all of you. I'm in Central Time Zone. So when I say Central Time Zone, it's 7 o'clock. Like right now, it's 1:33 in the afternoon here in Wisconsin. All right, so I'm Central Time Zone. So when I say 7 o'clock, it's my time. You guys act accordingly, all right? And I will record that. And for all of you, you know, I will post that in the next video. I encourage you guys to show up, you know. I want to hear from you guys. I'd like to hear from you guys live. I do have my website, loveandlightjason.com, which you can schedule a one-on-one with me. So I encourage you to go there and look at that website. And, you know, if you really want one-on-one time, that's beautiful. Come to me. I'd be more than happy to sit and chat with you. Many people have, and I've helped them beautifully. I started a membership here as well, because YouTube wants me to get that going. So I got that going. So there's 3 tiers of memberships. So I encourage you to look into that. And there's rewards for those. Like, you'd get early access to this video instead of it being just regularly put out. I would give it to you for a few days, or you'd have early access to it, which means you could contact me earlier, so on and so forth. So I encourage you guys to look into that. Again, put your comments down there. Anything you want me to talk about. Again, the live stream is coming up Saturday, 7 o'clock my time. Even if I don't have a studio, I will just do it right here on YouTube. I'll hit live stream and I will be going. So come on in. It's a perfect opportunity for you guys to, you know, be with me, and we can talk about things other than just the video. Other than that, guys, I love you so very much. I do. Thank you for loving me and supporting me. I am truly blessed. I am. This year is going to be a great year. the shift is coming. It's here. We're going to be in full swing. So open up. If things seem weird, seem out of control, you know, it's for a reason. We're, you know, growing as a species. So just realize that and just take it in. It may seem weird. It may seem just out of nowhere, and that's the way it's meant to be. So I encourage you to just go with it and open your hearts, open your minds, and realize, ladies and gentlemen, who you are. You are all God's divine, creative, powerful beings. All right. I love you all so very much. I hope you have a blessed day and a happy new year, and I will see you again soon. Goodbye.